Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome to the AI&I Show.
I'm Chris Parker, guiding conversations at the edge of humanity and artificial intelligence. And with AI, we are exploring how humanity shapes technology
And how the machines are shaping humanity.
This is Chris Parker, and this is the AI&I Show, and I'm having a conversation with Tony Fish, who is a serial entrepreneur. He's an investor. He's a board advisor, and he has 30 years of experience, and I love this, navigating uncertainty. He has published 6 books. The recent book was Decision Making in Uncertain Times, and I found that so relevant to our conversation about what does AI mean to I in this crazy, uncertain time. And he's known for helping leaders and boards, surface those difficult, unasked questions. And I'm fascinated about this conversation to see what kind of unasked questions we can surface in this time we have together. So in order to kick us off, Tony, maybe can you share why AI and I as a topic attracted you to engage in this debate? So why is this relevant and meaningful to you as an I in that AI and I equation?
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for asking questions and opening a debate. I think at the beginning of all new technologies, and we often go back to the wonderful word of the Luddites, and how the people would break down the mills because they didn't understand them. And reality is every technology has the same things that as technology moves ahead, there's people who try to stop it. And I look at these things by going, actually, we should equally value the progress, but we should equally value those who doubt. And we should be able to master the ability to see both sides of their views. And with AI and I right now, I don't think we've understood almost either side of the debate. And the nuances within the debates are so shallow and they become very opinionated. And we see this politically, that you're one camp or the other camp. You can't sit in both camps, equally value them as we wrestle with it. And that's where I'm at. That's why I love what you're trying to do. It seems to be, let's wrestle with this stuff and let's get deep and dirty. Let's get muddy. Let's get a few bruises on ourselves, because that's the only way.
And how would you describe those two camps? So, I think there's the tech optimist, Silicon Valley, bro culture, maybe that's what we called it a couple of years ago. And then there's the dystopian, we're all going to die. It's going to be disaster. How would you maybe articulate that better based on your observation?
I think you were spot on. I think one is almost you go back to sort of the 1930s with Flash Gordon and some of those wonderful sort of images that we would be flying around by today in and none of it became true. And there were people who, even at that point, were still worried that if you went faster than a certain percentage as miles an hour, the brain would fall out. And just fascinating pieces. And we've done it in history so many times that there's the camps of the optimists and the pessimists, effectively the dystopian, utopian. And I suppose so much of the utopian is now what we see as the media, Terminator, The Matrix, all of those massive movies. And actually, I think when people start to look back and they see how early, even Space Odyssey 2001, hello, Dave, I'm not going to do that. And they're starting to look at it and go, how did people that long ago actually have some of that thinking? And we just enjoyed it and we didn't see it was going to be relevant. And then it's almost called us up and biting our ass. And I think yet they've become so cultural to us that we refer to them so often that I don't even know if they're utopian or dystopian views anymore.
Well, I look at it maybe in a slightly different way, that in our modern, certainly Western culture, media, Hollywood is a way of expressing and discovering cultural possibilities that we don't otherwise have another avenue for. And so Skynet, is presented in a certain way. Maybe in the same way that comedy is a way of
Mm.
positioning a conversation maybe around politics or things that are uncomfortable. And it is a way of for us, I think, to wrestle with it and maybe have conversations about it. Like, I remember,
Yeah.
whatever it was the 90s when Matrix came out, friend Brent, we were in Santa Clara and watching it and having a conversation after it, like, okay, well, what what happened just now, like what did that
Yeah.
mean to you? And so I think if it's triggering a thoughts that can maybe help us prepare for my response, my response in this time, then maybe it's helped. I don't know, but maybe it's also too limiting, because if we only have, Terminator and Matrix, and it's bounded our view of the possible, because typically it's not a rosy, hey, here's a movie about, AI replacing all the mundane work and people become, fully
Yeah.
enlightened. Like, I haven't seen that movie yet.
I kind of like I completely agree.
Yeah.
And so often you go down to conversations with people and they come back to their views are informed purely by those media films. They really haven't got any depth below.
Yeah.
Yeah, to me, what they should be doing is going, who wrote the script?
Yeah.
And how did they get that view?
Oh,
And
yeah.
when was that script written? Because to me, they're the things that say people were starting to think about that far earlier than almost the rest of society comes along with.
Yeah, I think if you ask those questions around Star Wars as well, you will find an amazing cultural rabbit hole,
Yeah.
around that time. It's the story behind the
I,
story.
yeah, and the oddity about Star Wars is I have a deep affinity to it. One is my next door neighbor when I was growing up. So this was when I was 13 years old, was the trumpeter on the signature theme tune. And because he was the trumpeter, he actually got tickets to the red carpet. So on the 4th of May, 1980, I went up to the red carpet to the opening of The Empire Strikes Back. And I saw the film when I was 13. And all reports are, I don't remember this conversation, but all reports are when I came away with my dad, I said, well, that's a rubbish film. It'll never catch on. The only thing we conclude from that is I shouldn't be a film critic. But yes,
Can you
it's,
imagine why you thought that? Was it just not for a 13-year
I,
old at that time?
I don't know. I don't think I saw the story. And actually, now I've worked out, well, I haven't worked out, but now it's been explained to me that actually, that's the seventh part of the story. Then you've got to watch this and this and this. And if you actually watch them in order, then the story hangs together.
Yeah.
And
Well,
I just I couldn't work out the story. And that was my problem.
yeah, because you're stepping in midstream, and mentioning story, the arc of the Star Wars and most other myths, is the hero's journey. And
Yes.
I'm wondering if we can overlay the hero's journey to AI and I. So, like, 2 years ago, AI has been around for a while, but Gen AI just
Yes.
broke it. And 2 years ago, the opportunity to cross the threshold into this new world is presented to all of us. It's
Yes.
just democratized, because you can literally just either talk to it or type to it.
Yeah.
So you don't need Python knowledge or any other, advanced skill. You can just go for it.
Yeah.
And at the end of that, there's going to be betrayals, and there's going to be people that are going to help you along the way, and there's going to be some artifacts. There's the whole aspect of the story, and at the end, we're going to get into a new normal. So I'm wondering if we can unpack a little bit, if you have any suggestions or advice on what people can put in their mental backpack, if you will, as they're going on that hero's journey.
I,
And if
I,
there's anything that they
um,
really should not do, or they really should do, or like how can they maintain themselves and not get into this, oh, Skynet is the only definition of the future because
yeah.
Hollywood said so.
Yeah. Actually, for those who can get access to the BBC, on the BBC website, it's worth going to their podcast section and looking for a guy called Rory Stewart. And Rory follows certain themes, and one of the themes he's been following fairly recently is heroism. So he's done about a 7 or 8 part series on what it meant to be a hero, all the way back in Greek philosophy, all the way up to
Mm,
Zelensky. But he then leaves on the last episode. He says, "What happens when AI becomes the hero?"
mm,
And and in the last part of it, he basically brings us all the way up to date with the superhero. So before heroes went into war, and World War I and World War II changed that because you couldn't stand up in the trenches and not die. And he uses the Laurence Olivier example of, you stand up, basically died by shrapnel because suddenly there was these mass annihilation techniques which came to the fore. So the old hero vanished and you couldn't be that type of hero. So out of that came this whole ideology of the poster hero and then effectively the superhero. And then he's carried that forward to today and how the skills and everybody else that was superhuman. And suddenly we're looking at this thing which is superhuman. So how are we going to heroize it? Or what are we going to do with this thing which is beyond human capability? And he leaves it as a question. I leave it as a question, but I think it's one we kind of need to wrestle with. I think it's a great
well, I think
perception.
let's wrestle with it, and another view on that is AI can make you superhuman.
Yes.
Because so general AI, or when it becomes more human, cognitive, and interactive, and maybe even physical. Okay, we'll have another podcast in 3 years when that happens. But right now, what people have said is that these will give me and you superpowers, extensions of ourselves, um, which can also be quite concerning. Meaning, okay, because if you have ultimate power comes ultimate responsibility, and um,
So, so
if you were to
yeah.
become a superhuman superhero, maybe this is an even better way of couching this question. If you were to become a superhero yourself, what part of you would you want to maintain as truly human?
Um, one of the, in fact, the final chapter in my the decision making uncertain times books, I present a framework which is called the peak paradox. And the peak paradox is how do we manage the paradoxes that we see in front of us? Because that's how we deal with complexity. And I draw the idea that there's 4 major paradoxes we have to deal with on a daily basis, which is one is survival. Have we got enough food, water to survive? The second one is, as a paradox, how am I optimizing for myself? The third paradox is then how do I optimize for the organization for which I work for or construct which I work for? And the last one is how do I optimize for a better society? Now,
And how are
people are
these
drawn
paradoxes?
because people are drawn to one or the other. And
Okay.
therefore, the paradox is introduced because you've got to try and balance
Yeah.
all of them at the same time. So you can't leave at peak paradox, which is where you try to balance all of those at the same time. Therefore, you have to find where you, as a human, are able to wrestle with the tensions or live with the tensions or compromises that particular position creates. And that to
Mm.
me is what makes you completely uniquely human as you as a human, because only you probably can wrestle with those compromises and those tensions. And that
Consciously
doesn't
so.
mean
That's what really that triggers me is
yeah,
with this framework. It's okay. I am choosing the collectives over me now, and
yes.
therefore the consequence is X.
Now we don't. There's the problem is I see with lots of humanity. We don't do that. We just end up in these quite often compromised positions, which is where we start to see mental breakdown. We see, work situations flare up over very simple things because people haven't realised they're actually compromising or living under tensions they didn't realise they didn't want because it
How
doesn't feel natural to them.
how can we apply this? So let's go down the
Yep.
the vision of AI providing the general person superpowers.
Yep.
And then they need to start making decisions on
Yes.
whether they wield these superpowers for any one of those 4 domains, if you will.
Yes.
What would that mean to someone? Like How would that
But
become
then,
alive in their experience?
yeah. But then again, what is going to be your superpower? Is it going to be hope? Is it going to be love? Is it being bold? Is it being courageous? Is it being curious? What do you
Mm.
judge as a superpower? And I think we don't even have that level of debate. So we go down to the pub, everyone wants to be faster, quicker, stronger. And actually, they're one idea of what a superpower is. My my one, I suppose, is that curiosity. If you want a superpower, how do you become more curious?
Mm.
How does your curiosity never stop being curious? How do you never stop actually? Because you can never understand everything, but it's the connectivity between things which are unique. And so you can learn everything, which AI can now learn everything. And it can
Yep.
recall everything, but it doesn't mean it can connect random ideas to create something new. And, you know, we we as a human species still do not understand fundamentally what consciousness is. There's 180 theoretical theories of what consciousness is, which sit into about 12 different ontologies. So there's 12 major studies of what they believe consciousness is, and below each of those is a good 10 to 12 further sections. So we have no idea what consciousness is. We have no idea where some of this stuff comes from. We have varying theories which, depending on which camp you're in, they may or may not add up. So we're so many people come to, I think, some of these decisions about AI or thinking about AI without, I think, the reality of the lack of understanding. So hence the reason I always go back to what is the question we didn't know we had to ask. And if we're going to come to AI and debate AI, I think the first thing we should be doing is spending time to think about the questions we should be asking that we've made assumptions on. And we've
Like,
made
what
assumptions.
is consciousness? Is that what you mean?
That's one
Yeah.
example. Like,
Yeah.
what is being bold? And like Rory Stewart's thing, what does it mean to be a hero?
Mm.
Because actually, that's fundamentally changed almost, at least 10 times over the last 5,000 years. And it's
And
just
and
about to change again.
and very culturally sensitive as well.
Incredibly culturally
Like,
sensitive.
coming from my American background, everyone wants to be a hero, and from my Dutch adopted
Yeah.
background, they don't even know what the word means.
Yeah.
So of course they have heroes, usually football players and things, but not nearly as many. So let me grab onto consciousness and still trying to navigate between this AI and I.
Yep.
And consciousness is something that we are aware of, maybe not explicitly every day, and the way that consciousness expresses itself could be in a form of a superpower of curiosity or heroism or something like that. But it feels to me like this is an essence of humanness that maybe AI will give us the time to explore more, in kind of an optimistic view.
And
Um,
I think what you've hit is actually something really important, which is that kind of like if an AI implementation gives you more time to be curious and more time to find those qualities that resist optimization and efficiency and effectiveness. So they effectively provide time for you to work out efficacy, what
mhm.
is right, and therefore ask the question, is this right? And how do I know it's right? And who decides if it's right? Which are all the things that effectively efficiency and effectiveness wants to drive out of the system. Your ability to ask a question.
Yeah, I think coming at this a different angle, like operational excellence, take it to the nth dimension is death. I think it's because
Yeah,
there's just no movement, there's no
yeah,
opportunity for creativity. And do you think, or have you seen, because we're just, our baby toe is just dipped in the
yeah.
water with this Gen AI thing. Are you seeing that there's any hints or clues that the automation or the effectiveness or the time savings are being used for the right things? And the right is very subjective. I know it's a
It's
tricky
incredibly
word.
so. I haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
Is the base answer, and and the problem with data is everybody can use data to justify the outcome they want to show, which is, you know, um, and lots of people are saying, and Denning was one of those classics that if you haven't got data, you've only got an opinion. The only problem is if you don't understand who's supervising the data that you're now using, you don't understand that your thinking has been supervised by somebody else. So all you're doing is actually representing the opinion of the person who gave you the data rather than having your own opinion. People don't like things like that because it fundamentally challenges them, because sometimes they believe data is a truth or a right or a fact, and data is none of those things.
Well, I think maybe they don't like it because the conclusion of that is it's their responsibility.
Yeah, to
Meaning
ask a question.
to
Yeah,
ask a question or to take a decision informed on, you're writing about uncertainty. We all live in uncertainty, and there is no perfect decision context.
yeah.
That there's always these things that are, based on your four paradoxes. Um,
But I want to go back to answer your question, Chris, because I think it's a good one, which is kind of like, perhaps. So where I come from is what are the questions I should be asking? And I've framed at the moment 4 questions. I don't know if they're good questions. I'm sure people will create better questions, and if they do, hey, drop them to you, Chris, and
mhm.
we'll share them round. But these are the sorts of questions I'm trying to get people to ask. And the first one, does this AI system expand or constrain the range of meaningful options available to humans? Does this AI system, so we're sitting in a board meeting and I'm asking the question, does the AI system we're just about to implement expand or constrain the range of meaningful options available to our customers? They don't like that question, because if you're into the world of optimization, it is absolutely only designed for one thing, which is to constrain and lock people in and exploit.
Well, connecting that to a different space in strategic decision making, I've heard that, and I'm sure there's people that have written on this. This isn't my thinking. I have to point at Tim Ferriss, I guess, or somebody
Yep.
that was on his. That if you, like, strategically, if you don't have a clear decision, then make a decision that opens up more decisions. And so
Yeah.
when you just said that, this is what just resonated with me: is this providing more, a wider
Yeah.
spectrum of
Yep.
surface area for playfulness and decision making?
Yes.
Yeah,
Perfect. So then
great.
the next question I take to people, exactly the same, you'll do the same thing, which I love, which is, does it increase? So again, does this AI system, does it increase or decrease our collective capacity for novelty, compassion, and love? I'll read it again. Does it increase or decrease our collective capacity for novelty, compassion, and love? It's a
I love it that you named love.
yes.
I wrote a book, Lead from Love, with Rumi, and it was my
Yep.
reflections on the 13th century Sufi mystic. And I wrestled with, because it is a business leadership book, and I
Yeah.
wrestled with naming love. And I love it that you did
Yeah.
it, because just as you experienced just now with me, is it forces you to stop and say, well, that's a word, that is a word that you need to. And if people
It's
are going to reflect on, does this increase the capacity for love and empathy and
yep.
compassion, then that is a thought you should have. So
Yes.
I fully support that question.
Yes, because we cannot disassociate humans from business. And if we do become completely dispassionate in our business, then the reality is you are not going to decide for the collective good or the collective capacity of novelty or the collective good of compassion or the collection of love. Yet you leave the business, i.e., you go home, and what's the one thing that you want to do? You want to be liked and you want to be loved. Deeply human connections.
I would even go further, that the management science peers and colleagues that I have that are, hardcore metrics and, run the machine, not the people are disposable. I think that's a short-term
Oh, massively.
plan, because without
Yeah.
human development and compassion, you will not innovate and you will not find the next whatever breakthrough, and your customers will feel that your people are tortured, and it's going to be short term anyway. So I like it because this is actually it's pointing, that business growth, which of course financially we're looking for, is dependent on human growth. And
Yeah.
if but third question.
Third question is, does this AI system support local adaptation while maintaining beneficial connections? So because we don't want to be isolated, how do we become part of the network?
Can you unpack that for me? Because my technical background, I'm going down APIs, and my head is going this whole strange direction.
Yes. So does this AI system support local adaptation? Can you do some of that cultural awareness pieces while maintaining the beneficial of connectivity, effectively globalization? So can you deliver something that's unique to Chris in his local village where he lives or his local city, and the benefit he needs in the instance and the personal context he's got right now, which isn't about personalization because it's now, not forever. Therefore, but also achieving the economies of scale that we want to achieve through it because we understand the economic benefits of it. But we don't treat everybody as effectively the same thing. So does it balance the local issues with the benefits that we understand that come through scale?
This is based on your four paradoxes. Basically, hey, can you balance this? Can you do this and this and this and this as best you can?
And if you don't, consciously, and actually you can't manage them all. So where are you going to compromise?
Yeah.
And where are you going to live with tension? Because then when you come to interviewing, okay, if you can articulate the tensions and compromises, okay, the person sat in front of you goes, I agree. I can live with that tension. I can live with that compromise, and you're going to build a team. If you can't call them out, you're going to bring team members in who basically become destructive because they want to move where you have come to that balance. And that's what we tend to see. And this is going to, this starts now at scale. So you end up with people moving outside organizations, even though they got the right skill set, because they didn't understand effectively the paradox is this organization has come to a conclusion about how they balance those tensions and compromises.
I see. My experience, I come at a little bit of a different angle, but when you're doing strategy work, I really emphasize on what we're not going to do and what we're not going to achieve.
Yes.
And that's actually, for me, a better conversation, because if you have 10 people around a table and everyone puts their ambition for the quarter or the year, and we say, yeah, we're going to do that. You're not, you're just not, so have that conversation and say, okay, well, if we can do one thing.
Yes.
Which is the one thing that we're going to do? And if you want to do some other stuff, fine. But what is the one thing that we have to do? So, but anyways, it's fourth question.
Again, does this AI system help us recognize when our management systems themselves need reconstruction? So we use management systems and reward systems, effectively, or measurement systems, to provide both incentive plus remuneration plus bonuses, which is how effectively we keep people focused on the task. And we say to you, this is the one task you've got to go and achieve. What we don't then go back and question is it the right thing now that we've moved forward 6 months? Because actually it is now baked in that you will get your bonus on us achieving that thing. So then what happens is we start diverting resources from doing the right thing that we should be and now be doing, because your bonus and incentive and measurement system is all geared towards this new thing. And the one thing that's going to happen now at speed.
It was speed. This is the dimension of speed that you're bringing in, because typically you would do this once every year or two, and you would do some sort of compensation review,
which now actually, if we determine that actually it's completely the wrong thing, the problem is that humans are very good at going, no, I don't want to change that because I know my bonus is going to come through because I've done X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if actually we can say, look, you're still going to get your bonus, but we're going to do this rather than that. Suddenly we change the incentive way of thinking. Now, the issues are that humans have this paradigm attachment problem. that we get basically we form an identity because of the role we're performing and the level of seniority we've got and the organization for which we work and the model that organization has. And if you're starting to challenge all of those things, how does the human have an identity? And you do, you see this. So person wanders into a room and they're introduced as the CEO of a bank. And everybody goes, oh, that's fantastic. And that person, what you don't realize, their identity is not their name now or anything else. They are now the chief exec of the bank. So now if you challenge the banking model and say that that's going to disappear, the individual becomes incredibly defensive.
Mm.
And their measurement systems, how they reward everything else, because it's paradigm attached, they are identified to the model and the branding. And this is what we're starting to see. Many of the human problems inside these organizations is humans are attached to certain ways of working, certain branding, and we've gone through this whole position of, your brand, your identity and who you are and how you identify yourself. And suddenly we're finding that that's a real problem for us because it's preventing us from being able to go, we need to change faster if we're going to be in this new world. But therefore,
I would say,
who are you? So you're sorry,
yeah.
just to finish off, Chris, which is why this podcast that you're doing, I think, is so interesting, which is AI and I. You kind of like nailed it in the question you're asking.
It there's so much in the last question. It's really organizational dynamic and organizational design question. And I don't think people are great at designing those systems to begin with.
No.
Because that's why hay points were in existence and stuff, and all of these artificial mechanisms that we tried to scientifically make everything fair and maybe really remove all the tensions from these decisions between the pay and the bonus and the packages of titles of individual people. I think that we're going to have to release some of that preciousness and then get into, equal doesn't always mean, it's equal doesn't mean equality. Is that the word? We can be very fair and not necessarily always the same because we're shifting and changing. So,
Yes.
on a quarterly basis, we're going to have to adapt to that. I think that requires an incredible level of who you are, so people are going to have to be very in touch with themselves.
Yes.
Like very solid beyond their title of the CEO of the bank. And through that, very trusting, meaning I'm going to be okay, regardless if I don't understand completely how the pay scale is going to work in the next couple of months.
Yep.
Because whatever, we're creating things, we're creating value, and I am confident that this will return to me.
Well, that's the really interesting part of this, because actually and this is why the measurement systems become really interesting, because actually you can start to understand, one, what value is to you and the organization. Mm-hmm. But second, you start to reward based on value. Now, at the moment, we have a hierarchy and pay goes up as you go up the hierarchy. Mm-hmm. Very, very simple, but brutally rubbish. Mm.
Yeah.
And actually really it's a completely rubbish system, because actually some of the largest value creators are right down the bottom. Now, what the new systems allow you to do is go, actually, we can change the whole communication system. So there's no need for hierarchy, because hierarchy was about communications. AI introduces actually flat and instant. So all of that vanishes, and the ability to have what you need. Secondly, it can start to identify and help identify where value is created. So that has another layering to, you can now start to actually reward based on value, not on seniority, position, job title, budgets, all of that stuff.
It's a shift in power dynamic, and
massive.
And the way I describe it to managers, like okay, in the past, with information scarcity and decision making, at the top of the pyramid. So like, okay, I know the answer, and everyone else needs to do the work. I think what AI is going to do is flipping that whole paradigm, that actually the answers are, oh, I love this. This is connecting right straight to this. The answers are available, and where the value is whether you know the right question to ask.
Yeah.
So, and then the people who know the right question to ask are the ones that actually have the problem. Of course,
Yeah.
there's going to be some strategic problems, and it's going to be a bit vague.
Yeah.
But the ability to within context at that moment, even though
Yeah.
it's uncertain, the VUCA world and all that, what volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world that we always
Yes.
that we live in. The front line will be more and more empowered to make
Other
excellent
than
decisions.
that, so VUCA, the odyssey of VUCA, it comes from the military. It
Yeah.
comes from a lady called Gillian Stamp who was doing some work for the military, and it was designed for situations. So a soldier is standing at a door and he's about to kick the door down.
Yeah.
Okay. How do we train them? Because we know the situation's volatile. We know it's uncertain because they don't know what's on the other side of the door. They know it's complex because of the multiple things that are going on. And we know it's ambiguous in terms of what the outcome's going to be. So it's how do we train the soldier that when they kick the door down, actually as many things that could possibly have been trained have been trained. What the business world has done is converted that piece of thinking into something they don't really understand what it was for. They use it as a way of looking at complexity as opposed to a way the soldiers were trained that actually,
Well,
no matter what happens,
yeah.
they know how to deal with the situation.
And then, and of course, in business, we're never trained to that level. I mean, and it's just
Yeah,
basically inappropriate at that point.
correct.
It is a nice buzzword to kick around, to express a thought of things are very, very unknown. I think what business also does, and this is where AI can help, is of all the, let's talk about a customer service agent,
Yep.
not a soldier kicking down a door, but as a customer service agent picking up the phone, can also be nerve wracking. But AI can handle 97% of the mundane in that case, because
Yes.
it's not VUCA, to
Yep.
misuse the word again.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's going to be only a few times when a human intervention, for whatever reason, is very appropriate. And
Other than the idea, so the permutation of that idea is that what you did yesterday, I can do again tomorrow. And actually, everything I did yesterday will scale tomorrow. And that requires that the processes and methodologies that you put in are infinitely scalable and don't change. And I think that's fundamentally
I violently disagree with that. Meaning,
because it's got to be adaptive.
Well, meaning the systems that I have set up with self-learning AI, that you can program these in order to get the response of this morning and automatically update, call it the SOP, so they're
Yes.
You should probably have a human in the loop of that, but they will become more and more and more adaptable, I feel. And so,
yeah. So that was my point. This is the difference between automation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where we're automated because, back to the Adam Smith ideology of separation of work. You don't need one person who can make all the pin. You need one person who can do one particular bespoke function, and we can automate that. And I totally understand that because we're still manufacturing pins, several hundred years later in the same way. So those levels of automation really work, but that's not what humans do or want to receive when they're not. So I just think we need to separate automation ideologies from processes and methods, which actually are a completely different scaling problem.
Love it. I think every segment of this conversation we could unpack and go down a rabbit hole of infinite length. And Tony, what I'd like to wrap up with is you presented 4 questions, and these were predominantly in the context of a business conversation, those questions, which I think are super relevant. I'm busy with creating an AI adoption and strategy playbook with a bunch of other experts, and I'm definitely going to steal these.
Yeah, do. And
bring them right in
improve
there.
them. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Improve them, please,
And
please.
and to have those reflective Is it wise? Are we balancing the constraints? Is this good? These are the
Yep.
things that these are the little tensions that I want to build into these systems. So people just
Yes.
don't just go, yeah, just go for it. Because well, sometimes you just need to go for it and get your black eye and come back and redesign it. That's fine. But um, what would be the question that we are inviting people when they stop listening to this to reflect, for themselves, but ideally at dinner tonight amongst
Yep.
friends and the family, and share what they heard here, and then say, you know what, I want to ask us all this question and have this conversation. What do you think the most beautiful, loving
Oh,
question could
so
be that would trigger this conversation right now?
so I try to write about 4 questions a week, which I publish on opengovernance.net. So the reality is, if I gave one question today, it'd be out of date by tomorrow
Great.
because I would have created another one. So I'm not going to do that. I think there's one useful one which is great to have over the glass of wine, the beer, the water, the barbecue, the meal, driving in the car, and chatting to somebody or whatever situation you're in. And it's and I'll answer my own question, so that helps people.
Oh yeah.
But I think it's a question that's worth asking, which is, what is the one meaningful KPI we should have for AI? What is the one meaningful KPI we should have for AI? Now, I know I've argued that I don't want one KPI and everything else. The way I'm coming at it
And just one
is,
thing for
yeah,
those that maybe are not in the corporate world, KPI is a key performance indicator, which is a
yes,
measure of success, for example. So
yes, yeah.
how,
How do
how
you
would you
measure
measure it?
success of AI?
Yeah.
What's the one thing you personally would want to see as a success measure for KPI, for AI, sorry. And the one I've got is it will help. Excuse me. The one I've got is it will help me ask better questions rather than efficiently answer predetermined ones. It will help me ask better questions rather than how efficiently it can answer the predetermined ones.
Mm,
Because if I can ask better questions and it can help me ask better questions, to me that is back to where you started. That's a superpower.
yeah. That
That's a
curiosity is your
superpower.
is your superpower. Yeah.
But it's I think it's part of humanity, and humans are incredibly good at asking questions.
I'm reflecting on my answer to that. Where my mind is going is, and I don't know, and I think these are all imperfect and wrong, but where my mind immediately went is my measure of success for AI would be to help the next generation be better people than we are.
That's a lovely one. I love that.
You know
That's
that
really good.
that that's where I went was there's an opportunity here for humanity to improve, if you will. I don't know, because
Yeah.
humanity is pretty cool as it is right now, but it's to maybe do less stupid stuff, perhaps by asking better questions, learning faster.
But
Um,
this is why it's a nice question to ask,
yeah,
because I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It's actually it's an individual answer which allows you to unpack kind of like what you want.
mm,
Because if it could give you one thing, and it does, then actually it's helped you on a path. So yeah, that's why I think it's a great question to have as debate rather than you have to come away agreeing.
yeah, and it can be very individual as well. So right
Yes.
before we close, Tony
Yeah.
Fish, you already mentioned opengovernance.net, and that's a Medium page, and you're publishing there a lot. There's also right on the top of there, I see that about the book, The Decision Making in Uncertain Times.
Yep.
We'll include all that in the show notes.
Thank
But
you.
before we go, can you repeat that question one more time as our way of saying goodbye to trigger and inspire, hopefully, the people that are listening to take a moment, just take a pause and reflect that for themselves. And when inspired, go share that moment and share that dialogue with someone they care about.
Yeah. And to me, take away a question when you sit there over the next cup of coffee and say, what is the one meaningful KPI for you that AI should be measured against?
Great. Tony Fish, thank you for wrestling what it means to play and exist in that space between AI and I.
Thank you, Chris. Love the conversation and thinking.
Please subscribe to the podcast and share the episodes.
And visit ebillion.com for help infusing AI into your business while improving the lives of the people who work there.